it's 20th anniversary of 9/11. That's going to be a lot of the focus today, but we also have a football game to cover as well, Nathan. And this is a game where you look at Auburn coming out of week 1 against Akron. This is an opportunity to go out and you go kind of, let's see if you can add to what you did. It's hard to go out and duplicate it, because it was I want to say pretty close to perfection. There's lots of things that coaches will find, but from a naked eye standpoint, that's about as well as the first game's going to go. So you look at game 2, this is an interesting one to see if they can continue moving forward heading into Penn State.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot this preseason, that it's very rare you get 2 of these kind of tune-up opportunities. It's really good for Auburn. We talked to Brian Harsin last week talking about getting the reps in for the backups at the end of the game. He had a very strategic way of going about that. We'll see if we even see the third-string quarterback today. The snap counts were not as extensive last week as you might have seen under Gus Malzahn in that kind of a blowout. Again, very strategic by Brian Harsin, trying to get these depth chart guys panned out and trying to get guys to figure out their spots on the depth chart. But like you said, Jason, I don't know how much different you can expect in terms of a result today, but what are you going to be looking for from that offense? Because like you said, near perfect, Bo Nix, you don't set a completion, I know it was Akron, their defense is real bad, but you don't set a completion percentage record for the program on accident. They were pretty much able to do whatever they want running the ball. But you think this Alabama State team might be better in some ways than Akron. What do you think you're going to see out of this Auburn offense against them today?
I think now, you look at Akron and they had, a little bit of an idea maybe what Auburn was going to do. Now, you teams they've had a week to look at kind of what you do, scheme for what you're doing, your personnel, some of those things. I know Travis Pearson really well, Alabama State's defensive coordinator. He's really good, and so I would expect they'll have some things worked up. This is how you adjust. This will be the first time we see how you adjust. And it is Alabama State, it's not Penn State, but it gives you an idea of, okay, what are you going to do when they take something away or try to take something away? They have some size in the middle of this defense, but I still think when you look at the edge, perimeter, Auburn's going to have some chances to really run the football, and that's where it starts. Tank Bigsby. Can we see more Sean Shivers? I think, they know what Tank can do. We saw Jarquez Hunter last week and doing some things, but I would, if you're Auburn, I think the ideal thing would be, can you get some work out of Tank Bigsby, get him out of the game, and then get Sean Shivers some work, get him ready for Penn State. But I think, can you stretch the field a little more? We saw some of that. Can you stretch it a little more? And for me, can you do it at the tight end position? We saw John Samuel Schenker catch 5 passes, mostly kind of shorter routes. Can you stretch it with Tyler Fromm or Brandon Frazier, Luke Deal, or even Schenker? Can you stretch the middle of the field with the tight ends to give those Penn State linebackers and safeties a little bit more to look at on film as you get ready for next week? Yeah,
so Schenker caught 5 passes. If he matches that today, he's the first Auburn tight end since 2014 to catch double-digit passes in a season already in the second week of the year. So that goes to show a little bit what Mike Bobo is doing differently with this offense. But on the subject of Mike Bobo, running the ball obviously is what you got to do to set things up. So that running back rotation will be interesting to see today. We didn't see Jordan Ingram, an in-state kid from Mobile who was at Central Michigan last year, and we wondered whether, so Sean Shivers only got 3 touches in that game last week. Granted, 2 of them went for touchdowns, but we wondered whether they were keeping his legs fresh for that Penn State game. Like Jason said, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that rotation today. But I think we know, at least just kind of based on the takeaways from week 1, that Auburn's got a pretty good backup running back in Jarquez Hunter. He was the first Auburn running back to go for 100 yards in his debut since Ontario McCaleb, 9 carries for 110 yards, and a pretty impressive touchdown where he bulldozed over somebody last week. But like you said, Jason, I'm interested to see what they do with this passing game, how they open things up, but also how they might keep things reserved from Penn State. You've covered a lot more football than I have. What have you kind of seen over the years in these kinds of games when you've got a look-ahead spot and you're trying to hold some things back maybe from that opponent?
Yeah, what you don't know is we know how Gus Malzahn did it, and that's been really since 2009, except for 1 year. Now we figure out how Brian Harsin handles it because each coach handles it a little differently. I think you probably have to go kind of a balance a little bit. You gotta work on some things to get ready for them. Talking to Ben Lear this week, he said, hey, here's something that you might not realize. He said, sometimes you might do something just to show it on film, so Penn State may take 20 minutes out of practice this week to work on something. You might not even use it against Penn State. So I think you add some things to the offense. I don't think you open it up unless you have to, but I think there's some things you add in. You don't throw out the whole playbook, but I think you add some things there, and then try to get out of this game as healthy as possible, but you got to go out and take care of business first.
That defense, we talked about them a little bit last week. Obviously, the offense got a lot of attention, but for the defense to put together the kind of performance they did in their first game, also under a new system, defensive coordinator Derek Mason working in a new scheme there after 5 years under Kevin Steele. They had a pretty impressive performance. Depending on where you look, they either got 6 sacks or 7 sacks. There's kind of a discrepancy between the official stats. If they got 7 sacks last week, that's their most in a game since the honk if you sack Brody game.
Yes, absolutely.
Back in 2005. So this pass rush, again, it was Akron. We'll see Alabama State also, a little bit overmatched opposition, but we'll see how that pass rush looks today. One guy in particular, Jason, we've been talking about all week is TD Moultrie. I'm interested to see, because he talked about, Akron schemed up for Auburn's 2 best defensive linemen. That's Derek Hall and that's Colby Wooden. And he knew that going into the game. I'll be interested to see if he's able to wreak havoc in the same way, or if teams start to realize that they need to scheme up against him. But if he turns into Auburn's 3rd best defensive lineman, that's difficult to stop 3 pass rushers that are playing at a high level.
Well, it's really good news if you do that. I think today you look and go, give me the middle of the defensive line. That's going to be my watch point today, because now if you look at Alabama State, they got some issues. They have really young offensive line, 4 either freshmen or redshirt freshmen expected to start on the offensive line. You think about helping out on the tackles. You got some one-on-one opportunities in the middle for Colby Wooden, Zykevis Walker, Tony Fair. We see those guys, Marcus Harris, obviously, but do we see Lee Hunter? Do we see some of those other guys involved? And Nathan, I've been thinking about this morning. I'm thinking about one of the things for me, if I'm Auburn, that I'm really conscious of today is if I can get a lead and build a lead, then I'm getting my defensive guys out in the second half because of one thing, because of the potential of a targeting foul.
Yeah.
It just kind of hit me this morning going, man, if I can build a lead, I'm getting my key guys out of there. They're not playing the second half if possible to avoid something happening and then those guys missing the first half of a Penn State game. So, that may be something on the mind of a Derek Mason or Brian Harsin. But again, it comes down to one thing, got to go out and take care of business first. I think this defense, I expect Alabama State to come out very controlled passing game like we saw at the end of the game from Akron. Ryan Nettles is a kid that I saw play in high school, teammate of Cam Riley from Hillcrest Evergreen. Really athletic kid, a big-time basketball player. He's 6'5". I would expect them to come out, try to dink and dunk, and try to move the football in that way instead of line up running a bunch.
Yeah, there's always tests. Even when the team is not exactly on your level, like an Alabama State. Like you said, Nettles, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the FCS in the spring season, so he's certainly no pushover. Ezra Gray, their running back, is a guy that Auburn fans will remember because he played in this game all the way back in 2018. I was looking at a bunch of Alabama State players for the story yesterday, and there's a lot of guys like that.
Yeah.
This is an experienced team, but like you said, the offensive line is something that Auburn might be able to take advantage of a little bit. Something I was thinking about this morning was, what were the takeaways, what were the issues from last week? And really one of the biggest ones was on special teams. Anders Carlson missing an extra point. Not a huge deal in a game where you win by 50 points. Might be something that they took a look at this week, though, for an opponent like Penn State. And a guy named Oscar Chapman, the starting punter now, he's beaten out Aiden Marshall. He kind of whiffed on a couple opportunities he had there for pooch punts. What else are you looking at from week 1 to week 2? Because they always say the biggest improvement happens between week 1 and week 2. How do you get to that point when you're playing teams that aren't exactly on a super high level of competition?
It's about execution. It comes down to that. I think in special teams, you look at those two guys, it's a breezy day as we stand right here in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So maybe how you handle that in terms of kicking, but in special teams itself, you look at the potential to go out and block a punt, go out and that's something you want to show Penn State to keep them from covering punts as much. Show them some pressures today. So I'd look for that, and then in the return game, have some opportunities to maybe break a big play. We saw Javarius Johnson return some punts. We saw Demetrius Robertson. We've seen Donovan Kaufman in kickoffs. Give those guys some opportunities. Can you improve in the blocking aspect of those special teams, coverages, all those things? It's just about execution today for Auburn to go out and handle those little things. We've heard Brian Harsin talk little things. You do that today, and you should set yourself up well for Penn State.
Yeah, the more you do that's multifaceted today, and like you said, that you present to Penn State in a way that's going to be complicated and that they're not going to be able to breeze through practice and know exactly what your identity is, I think Auburn is better suited for that. And the targeting you got to watch out for, because in that Louisville Ole Miss game,
it's something that obviously is a focal point right now, so I would be conscious of it if I was Auburn.
Yeah, we saw last year. I can't remember. Smoke Monday got a targeting call the week before, but it was at the beginning of the Georgia game.
Yes.
And we saw how that kind of sucked the life out of that defense, even though there was a lot of other great defensive players there. Losing a guy, especially a starter, I think that's a good point. It's something we'll be watching out for today. Thank you guys so much for watching the pregame Blitz here on Auburn Undercover. Go check out our game coverage all game long at auburnundercover.com. Jason's going to be down on the field taking some great pictures. I'll be up in the press box. We'll have all kinds of coverage after the game. So be sure to stay locked at auburnundercover.com. And everybody enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you after.